as a fellow homeschooler, Classical Academy High School alumni mom. I've had 4 kids in classical academies, and college planning professional. I created this presentation to help other parents like me, I've got 2 kids in high school, start to understand what is happening and how it's impacting college admissions, life on campus moving forward, as well as the financial side of things. So I've put together an overview, and we'll leave about 10 minutes at the end for questions. I would ask that you put them in the chat box, maybe as we go along. I don't have an assistant with me today, so I can't read the chat during the talk, but I will read them, as I said, at the end. And current events are already creating ripple effects that are going to impact our kids all their lives. For my 16 years of experience as a college planner, I can see many ways for our students today to shine. And what students as young as 8th grade do now will impact their college and scholarship options. So I really wanted to take some time and share this information with as many families as I could. So I'm glad that you're here today. What we're going to talk about today is testing. Obviously, it hasn't been available. Some of the impacts there on admissions. Changes on campus, things that are being considered and things that are going on, and we could tell already. We're going to talk about the financial side. And then I have some initial thoughts of things we can do now, both for students and for parents. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to save some time at the end for Q&A. So I will introduce myself a little bit more, because I know that we are in a Facebook group together, but there's more to me than that. I've been a college admissions, financial aid, and scholarship expert since 2004. I've written, well, the 4th edition of the Every Catholic's Guide to College is coming out this summer, and then I've also written The Ultimate Guide to Top Quality College Planning. Those are both available on Amazon. I've been homeschooling since 1998, although I've had kids at Classical Academy schools. 4 of my 6, is that true? No, actually, all 6 of my kids have attended various classical academies, and 4 of them were at Classical Academy High School before we left and moved away from Southern California. I'm a certified college planning specialist, so I've been doing this for 16 years and have training. I have an industrial engineering degree from Northwestern University and a master's degree in Catholic theology from Franciscan University of Steubenville. And then I'm a member of a number of professional organizations for college planners. And so I mention that always because we have ethical standards that we adhere to. So I see that we have some people coming in late, which is just fine. I just want to mention that I don't have an assistant with me today, so I've asked people to put their questions in the chat as we go along. And at the end, I have time for question and answer. So I will be sure to address your questions at that time. So we're going to talk initially about testing and admissions. You know, as we all kind of know, we had the SAT and ACT planned, and robotics was starting, and we had theatrical performances and dance things going on, and athletics were going on, and then everything in the world got canceled. So we've had huge disruption. At the same time, then today, now this is more directed to homeschool students, since I gave this talk for homeschoolers earlier. This slide and the next slide show that some of the schools are not changing their testing requirements. And this is true for homeschoolers and non-homeschoolers. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. Then I also want to share a little bit about what's going on kind of in the wider realm. So we have high schools that stopped teaching in March and froze grades and called it done for the semester. We have schools that shifted to everything pass-fail, and they did the best they could, but everybody got pass or fail. We have some that shifted online teaching and froze their grades so that students got whatever grade they had in March, or they could make it better. They couldn't make it worse. We had students who had to prepare for the AP exams all by themselves. And we had students that had wonderful teachers doing amazing things and providing a lot of support in addition to the support the College Board offered. We have students that had to choose themselves whether to take grades for the spring or go pass-fail. So the admissions is seeing all of this chaos going on. And then probably the only thing they're not really seeing are the homeschoolers that kind of continued like my younger son did without any real interruption at all in his semester. And of course, all the extracurriculars were canceled. And then admissions is also seeing on the family side where we've had families shift to having parents working at home or parents be unemployed, We've had families that didn't have enough computers for everyone or didn't have internet access and really struggled because now, you've got mom trying to work in one corner of the bedroom, dad's trying to work in another corner of the bedroom, and the kids are trying to be online for their classes. It was extremely stressful, and there were more or less successes going on in various different places. And then you bring in the whole factor of some of us got sick, some people have died, everyone's dealing with fear and a lot of uncertainty about the future. So admissions sees all of that, but how does that then come into us and what we do? So they've taken some initial actions. A number of colleges and universities have gone test optional. And when they do that, that means that students can apply without test scores, but students can also apply with test scores. So they have two pools of applicants then, and they have to figure out, especially if they're new to this, how are they going to evaluate these two pools in a way that's fair to both and come up with a good class and figuring out who would be the right people to have into their next class. At the same time, most institutional scholarships are still based on test scores. So love them or hate them, they're still a reality on the scholarship side. And then we have schools that have decided to not consider test scores at all. Some of them are going to ask for graded papers and some other demonstrations of academic prowess. It makes sense. They need something to evaluate the students on. And some schools, this is brand new, and they're trying to figure out how do we do what's called holistic admissions application review. They've never done it before. Some schools have done this, some schools have not. And then the Common App added the COVID-19 question, and I'm going to address that specifically as to what students should do with it, because the colleges are trying to understand what the reality that our kids faced, and make decisions in the midst of this. Some things haven't changed. I'm guessing that everyone's probably heard that a lot of schools shifted their May 1st deposit deadline to June. Some have even shifted to July or even August, but they haven't changed any deadlines as far as when to apply. So for our seniors that are just graduating, they've had some flex about when to commit to going to school, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But our juniors, nothing's really changed as far as their deadlines, even though testing is not available, and the SAT just opened some availability to register for upcoming test sittings in the fall that will hopefully happen. The application season hasn't changed. It's going to open July 1st or August 1st. Everything is the same. They're still requiring recommendations. Everything needs to get done. So that's not changing. So for students, what can they do? They want to choose their colleges and majors carefully. And it's really important, especially for our rising seniors, that they kind of do as much of it as they can over the summer, and also sort of hit the pause button, because they're going to want to see what those prospective schools are doing as far as the modality of teaching as we move forward. And I'll talk about that and some of the options that schools are looking at, because for some of our students, different ones of those are going to be places they can thrive, and others that's too far of a stretch. So they're going to need to bring all of that into account as they're finalizing their applications, as they're completing them. So it's a little bit hard. It's a lot hard. Okay. They also still need to create powerful essays, which was difficult before, even more difficult under these circumstances. And I'm encouraging them, really, this is the year for sure to be working with a college consultant or coach, because they're going to, people like me, we help bring out the best in students. We empower them to hone their strengths, to direct their development and growth and what to do with this time. I've got students, we're exploring and doing all sorts of interesting things they never would have considered if their regular activities weren't happening. They wouldn't be doing that on their own. And then, of course, effectively presenting all of that. And another thing I would like to note is that the colleges are struggling to secure enough students. And they are really doing a lot of different things. We're going to get into some of that later. But our students who are well prepared and have a lot of accomplishments are going to be sitting in places where they can really tap some excellent scholarships and some opportunities to get accepted at schools where maybe they wouldn't have gotten accepted before. So I really want to encourage students to think outside their box a little bit, because there's a lot changing. and really find programs that match their interests, their learning styles, and enable them to gain the education to equip them to achieve their dreams. And especially without draining the family's resources too much, which our kids really are conscientious and concerned about. And I also wanted to mention a student I worked with a couple of years ago, and he couldn't do any extracurriculars. His grandmother lived with them and had a lot of medical needs. And then his mother was a police officer who was injured, and she had a lot of medical needs, and she'd been taking care of grandma. So by the end of his freshman year in high school, all of his extracurriculars were taking care of, getting grandma up in the morning and medication management and to doctor's appointments and all of that, and then taking care of his mother as well. And keeping his dad kind of, as he's working double shifts, making up time for mom's being off work. And it was a huge responsibility for this student. And we were able to articulate that effectively on his applications. He got into a fabulous honors college with great big scholarships and has been able to go forward and thrive. And that has really worked out for him. So this time where we feel like we're not doing anything, if we articulate that effectively, the colleges are going to recognize that, yes, you are. They could recognize it before, they're certainly going to recognize it now, with so many students in unusual situations where the families have more need for their aid, especially those of us with large families. What to do with COVID essay prompts. So it's been added to the common application. I expect it to be added to a number of the other applications. And this is a different kind of essay. So we're used to the personal statement requires a lot of reflection and refinement. It's a different kind of essay. This is a short 250 word, and it's really informational. They're going to, when they revise and have it open again in August, there will be a number of little comments in there and pointers for the students. But I want them to get to start to think about 3 things they need to share through this. First, what changes have they experienced? What materially has happened? Classes shifted in this way, extracurriculars were canceled, dad came home, mom did whatever, I was an essential worker at 17 at the grocery store, whatever those things were. And what changes were experienced, kind of the trickle down. Now I'm responsible for all the meals, or I'm teaching 2nd grade because this one's got this need, whatever those things are. Again, we're into facts. And then what have they done during this time? For a lot of kids, especially juniors, rising seniors, they had a lot of plans. They're involved in leadership and clubs and competitions and all sorts of things that they couldn't do. So they ended up with a bunch of time. And the family needs took up some of it, but a lot of them still had time. What did they do with it? Some kids are playing video games. Some kids are doing some really amazing things. So this is an opportunity for them to share a little bit there, especially if they had a lot of needs in the family and they weren't able to do other things. They have a place to say, this is what happened. And this is kind of a just the facts, ma'am, kind of thing. This is not a big reflection, but it's a place to just share what their world has been, to give admissions some idea. That's part of why I mentioned at the beginning, kind of all these different things that they're seeing. They're seeing this huge chaos in home, at school, in the world. So what does this student's world look like? So they can evaluate their accomplishments and achievements in light of their situation, which is going to be different from their next door neighbors, etc. Okay, moving on. Let's take a look at life on campus. This, although it's not a picture from this week, it could be, right? We got one bicycle and it's pretty empty. But not that long ago, we had kids everywhere, and we had, kind of normal expectations of what college was going to be. The whole range of small liberal arts schools to huge universities. We kind of had some sense of what that was, and that's pretty different. So I mentioned earlier about our rising seniors and needing to take a look at how their prospective colleges have decided to move forward educationally. Based on the factual things I'm reading, it doesn't look likely that campuses are going to open, although the colleges are saying that, and that's very much a marketing thing, and we will talk about that in a couple minutes. But I wanted to talk about these education modalities. There are about 15 or so that a lot of colleges are talking about employing, and I thought I would bring out just a few to help people have some idea of the variety, and to recognize that some of these are going to work great for some of our kids, and then some others are not going to work so well. So Cambridge in the UK is going to be doing a flipped classroom, which is a hybrid online and in person. And not everybody knows what that means, so I have a little visual there. So traditionally, we're sitting in the lecture, and then we go and we do the homework, whatever that is. In a flipped classroom, we're doing the reading on our own, we're watching the lecture on our own, and then we're gathering in small groups for activities or tutorial discussions or whatever that is, doing problem sets and getting help with the math and science kinds of things. So that's what the flip is. So you're, in a sense, getting taught on your own, but then you're able to assess and process that information together with others. At Cambridge, that makes a lot of sense. That is their tutorial model. We're seeing other schools talking about doing that. The CSU system, everything online except for some of their labs. We're seeing a lot of that this summer. We've got schools that are talking about staggering schedules, like having 3 terms instead of 2 during the year so they can modify the number of students on campus at any given time. Or doing block schedules, so they're dividing semesters into 2, doing more intensive classes in a shorter time period, so that way they've got agility to maybe move a whole term to a different calendar time, depending on what's going on with the pandemic. Shifted terms. We've got schools talking about starting earlier in August so that they could end the semester before Thanksgiving and not have kids going home in the middle of a term and coming back to campus for finals. So we've got a lot of different things. These are just the top 5 that I've been seeing the colleges talk about, but it's something that's going to be we need to take into consideration. Another question that's been coming up is online is not the same in general, so are the price points going to be lower? Colleges are wrestling with that too. No definitive answers on that one. Obviously, they're businesses. They want to get paid, but they recognize the challenges. So they're doing a lot of training of professors and things this summer to bring people up to speed as they sort through the uncertainty and a lot of different models of how they could do it. I thought this was enlightening. This was from an article this week. 3 different presidents. Purdue, which is a great school in a lot of ways in Indiana, I was really surprised the president's like, feel uncomfortable, don't come. You know, you're not for us, at least not this fall, kind of, you know, if you're not prepared to adapt to the inconvenience of education in a pandemic. It's hard to hear him say that. At the same time, I think maybe us adults are having a harder time than our kids of adjusting. As we're younger, we tend to adjust more, but we all have our abilities. If we're not going to be able to be flexible, we're going to have more challenges than students that can be more flexible. The president of Arizona State told his kids to think like a surfer. You're going to find yourself in deep water. You're going to need to find a way out. And don't let people tell you what your fate's going to be. And then the president of University of Washington, she told her students, it's not the moment to cut short your education. The presidents are deeply, deeply concerned that a lot of kids are going to not go to college or going to drop out of college because of all of this. So they are really encouraging flexibility, and they're encouraging kids to have their dreams and stick it out, do what they need to do to get to where they need to go for themselves. In addition to, obviously, it helps their university to be able to be a university, but they really do care about kids. So they've kind of got both sides going on of the business. We got to run a business here, and we want to empower kids. But kids are going to need to be flexible. So I just wanted to share that to give a little insight of what's going on with these presidents. The other thing we're seeing is retail style marketing in the way the colleges are presenting themselves. The other name for the admissions office is the marketing office. And we've got all sorts of things going on. Obviously, we've got virtual campus visits happening. We have, like, American Public University is offering discounted tuition, 50% for a couple of classes in the fall, or is it over the summer? And then Robert Morris is offering a free online course this summer. I've seen, like, Franciscan University is offering to cover whatever tuition is not covered by scholarships for new students, new first year and transfer students. I've seen other schools doing fundraising, lots of different things. And bottom line is they want to get enough students on campus. So we're going to continue to see retail style marketing promotions to get kids to sign on the dotted line that they're going to come to that school. So let's talk a little bit more about the financial side of things, because obviously there's a huge impact. So all colleges, no matter how wealthy you thought they are struggling financially. Johns Hopkins, Northwestern, and Arizona State are schools that I've been able to read quite a bit about. They have all incurred extra costs. And they've tried to be really generous refunding room and board, which makes sense, but they've still had a lot of costs that weren't covered. They lost revenue, tuition, research, lots of ways that they've lost revenue, and their endowment value and their earnings went down. Some colleges have already closed, others will. And we knew this was coming. There's a huge population drop after the class of 2025, so we've been watching that come. But COVID is just making it happen sooner for some of these schools, because like Johns Hopkins is talking about losing over $100 million this year. And if they're projecting with the way things are going, losing like $675 million next school year. That's insane. That's an enormous amount of money. Northwestern, one of those top tier schools, 100% need met, very wealthy, lots of scholarships. They're furloughing people, they're laying people off, they're cutting here, they're cutting there. It's Arizona State is furloughing. It's significant. We're going to see colleges merge, we're going to see colleges close, and we're going to see that as a trend over the next decade. As I said, the colleges are responding. They're taking pay cuts across the top, furloughs for lower paid people. They're stopping projects. They're taking deep budget cuts. One of the things that a lot of us are watching carefully is this summer, the scholarship budgets will be set for the next year. So they set them in the summer for the kids applying in the fall. So scholarships are coupons to draw students, which they're desperate to have. At the same time, the dollars are a smaller pool. So how those are going to shake out is going to be very interesting and very telling. We have colleges selling property. I already mentioned some having fundraisers, and they are doing everything they can to secure students for 2021, including telling everybody, big headlines, national headlines, we will be on campus this fall. The small print is, if we can, if it's safe and the health people let us, we'll be here. That's a huge if. But they know that kids would prefer to be on campus. That's interaction, that dynamic between the students and between the students and professors is a big part of the college experience and a big part of how you grow and learn in so many different ways. People prefer that. So that's what they're saying, because they're really trying to secure this class and get kids to stick, to not go away. And then there was an article this week saying the University of Kentucky announced they will not lay off staff as part of their 2021 budget. And the experts were like, they're going to be one of the few that do that. Everybody's going to be laying off. So it's a really dynamic, changing time as everyone's trying to cope. And the financial aid offices themselves, they're working remotely like everybody else. They have a limited pool of funds that were budgeted last year, and they're doing their best to be responsive and answer questions. There are a lot of families have had financial situations change, and there are a lot of requests. At the same time as the May 1st or June 1st deadlines come and go, they know that, oh, we had given Juanita, $10,000 a year. She's not coming. We can now put that money and spread it to other families, because we've got this family over here and that family over there that have need that didn't have need before, so we can help them. So they're actively doing all of that to help as many students as they can. The government has issued, and they do this every year, but they have issued the interest rates for student loans and parent loans for next year much lower than before, much lower, like 1.5 lower than they were. So we have 2.75% interest for the student loans, the Stafford loan program, and then the Parent Plus loan program is at 5.3%, which is really low. And so to put that into dollars and cents, borrowers are going to save $1,000 in interest per $10,000 borrowed if they're paying back over 10 years. That's huge. So there's trying to help. Of course, nobody wants loans, but if you have to take them to lower the interest rate, it's the better, right? So let's try to pull all this into how admissions is impacted with regard to our kids. This is a slide from my usual College Prep 101 presentation of 90% of scholarship monies come from the colleges and universities themselves. That's true. So we really need to pick our schools carefully, even more so now. Private scholarships directly impact our need-based aid. That is still true. And scholarships are based on test scores. So we need to be getting to test scores whenever we can. The SAT has opened up that for the fall. The ACT is doing very creative things in June. We'll see how that works out. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. The CLT has gone way up. It's a substitute for the ACT or SAT, but there's still a lot of colleges that don't take it. So we'll see how that goes. Some other expectations we're expecting 20% melt this summer. So there's always a melt. So let me explain. A college that wants to have 75 students in their class will accept 100 because they know that some of the kids are going to get accepted other places as well, and they're not going to choose to come to their school. And so say they get their 75 kids on May 1st have deposited. So great, they've got their class. That's what they're saying. But over the summer, usually there's some melt. And so maybe 5 of those kids get taken off a wait list somewhere else, or they decide not to go to school, or they do a gap year or whatever. So they're down to 70. That's what the melt is. So they haven't actually made their class of 75. And so they're expecting this summer 20% to drop across the board, which is unprecedented and huge and a real problem for a lot of people. We saw the wait lists very, very active. So back to our scenario of the 75 students, I've got my schools like Stanford that if people say yes to Stanford, they're coming. They don't have much melt, but it's happening. And they went to their wait, so they almost never go to their wait list. They've gone to their wait list and they went to their wait list before May 1st. We're seeing that, and we have schools openly talking about probably working through their entire wait list and inviting all of those students to come on. So they are extremely, not quite desperate, but maybe desperate to fill their class, to make sure they've got enough students coming in. They're very concerned that a lot of students over the summer are going to not come. Many are thinking that there'll be a lot of this class of 2020 kids will ask for a gap year. They're going to defer their admissions. So the way that works is you get accepted, you make your deposit, and then you apply to defer for a year. And schools have policies. Some pretty much don't give them at all. Some are very, very open to it. This year, everybody's rethinking their policies, but so far there's been no increase in requests, but everyone is expecting there will be come July, August, because kids may choose and say, I really need to be in person. I'm going to wait it out for a year. Or it's in person and that feels too risky. I'm going to wait it out for a year. And there's no telling if the colleges are going to say okay to that or not, and how that's going to impact admissions for the class of 2021. Admissions people are openly starting to say they may well accept 10% more students next year to ensure securing a class. So again, now if I'm accepting for that 75, I'm not going to accept 100, I'm going to accept 110 because I'm expecting more of those kids to melt, to go other places. So as I was saying earlier, our kids really need to be careful looking at the schools that they end up with some kind of learning environment that works for them in this flexible situation that we're in. But they're going to have some doors open that haven't been open to them, both for scholarships as well as for just acceptance. So it's going to be a very interesting season, but the well-prepared kids who know what they want, have really got clear definition and goals, they could clean up. There's a lot of opportunity for them to be able to get more scholarships and more opportunities than they would have in another cycle. Some other things from the other side of the desk, again, I'm trying to give perspective of what's going on the admissions side. So some of their deadlines have shifted, as we were talked about earlier, the May 1st, June 1st deposit deadlines. Many have not, like the application deadlines. Normally, admissions people are into their traveling, especially in the fall, where they get to meet students around the country. A lot of them have regional representatives, so they're meeting with the high school counselors and the students, and they're doing a lot of that and really starting to get to know some of those kids who are going to be applying. They can't do that. College fairs are virtual. High school counselors have been at home for months now. So admissions staff are reaching out to college consultants like myself, and we've had so many meetings with so many different colleges. is they're all sharing what they would share with the kids, answering our questions, answering counselor level questions, and really hoping that we can be more conduits for them to bring students to them, which is part of what we do. I'm very focused on students and empowering the students, finding the right colleges, but the more colleges I have in my head, the more that smorgasbord of ideas, of opportunities is there. But they are scrambling to reach out to students in new ways. Obviously, everybody, as one admissions person bluntly put it, kind of grabbed the last admissions student worker before they left campus and said, hey, let's do a video real fast of you doing a tour, and made these videos in these campus tours. So they had something to put out there. They've been really working at making virtual visits possible. As I said, some have changed testing requirements, some have not, and some are revamping their application evaluation processes, especially without scores. So they're working from home as well, and they're trying to be responsive to our kids, but there's an awful lot of dynamism on their side of the table as well. So what do we do? Let's try to pull this together. So for students, number one, keep calm. It's going to be okay. Take some time to get to know themselves well. What kind of learning environment works for them? How do they thrive? What are they interested in? How can they pursue their interests now? Sometimes they don't know what they don't know. True for all of us. Or even like my daughter started doing container gardening. There was so much I didn't know about that. I'd only ever done regular gardening. So we're learning as we go. And as you learn more facets and nuances of the field. And you're getting interested in this or that, they're going to find the same thing. I think I like biology. Now there's, 14 subsets of biology. So now I'm looking for, certain concentrations or double majors or different opportunities for research, et cetera, et cetera. So the more that they can identify and pursue those, the better. Clearly define their college goals. Why are they going? What are they looking for? What are the criteria for a great school for them? And deeply research prospective colleges. I can't tell you how many kids apply to schools because their best friend goes there, or their parent went there, or they heard it was a good school, but they don't know anything more than that. And I've had kids, not clients, but others, because I have 6 kids, so I've known an awful lot of high school kids over the years. And they'll be like, yeah, I got there and they didn't even have my major because they hadn't even looked at that. It just blew my mind. Like, how did you do that? And the parents assumed the kids looked, and the kids it never occurred to them to look. They just assumed that every university had whatever that major was. And their best friend just had such a blast and talked about this, that, and the other thing. And then they realized at the end of first semester, they haven't even seen that kid. And they're roommates. So that happens a lot. So they really need to take this time to explore the schools. Do they have what they want in all of the different ways that they want? Take tests when they can. And so there need to be, on a rolling basis, ready to take them in a sense too, because when are you going to be able to take those SAT subject tests in math too and chemistry? Hopefully you're signed up for August, and then maybe you're going to take them in October or December, or, and they have to be agile, because both the ACT and SAT are talking about, and have been talking about, going to take the tests on the computer. The CLT is on the computer. So is the GRE, which I took just a few years ago in preparation for the doctoral program that I'm in. And I had to learn some new strategies and techniques of how to deal with especially the reading comprehension pieces, because they're long passages, so you couldn't see it all on one screen. And they're asking these questions, these detailed questions, and I didn't have time to hunt through this. Obviously, I can't mark it. It's on my monitor. So I had to learn some different strategies. And so they need to be able to do the same thing, because they're going to roll into this environment where sometimes they're going to be reading a complex text for a class, and it'll be on a screen, or it'll be a PDF that they can print, or it'll be a textbook. And how to effectively annotate and absorb that information and process that information are skills that they need to develop. And then lastly, they need to seek ways to serve. What can they do? Even if the best they can do, because there's fragile people in their house, they need to be super, super cautious, is go out at 6 o'clock in the morning with their sidewalk chalk and draw smiley faces for the people that walking their dog that day. They can do that. And they're out at 6 a.m. before there's anybody out. so they can do that. They're not compromising anybody's health at home, and or sending notes or making masks, or there's a lot of different things going on. But getting outside of themselves to pursue some of that can really help deal with the depression that a lot of people are dealing with as we go in this long-term uncertainty. So all of those things are things that students can do that will be very helpful to them. Parents, again, keep calm. Remember, when you see headlines, they only exist to grab your attention. Go for the details. And I would go for the details. So not just read the article, but, oh, that was ABC school. What do they say on their website? What is their press release? What is the full information about it? And then how does that apply to us? Because we have a test score, don't have a test score, we have an income, we don't have an income, we're in state, out of state, whatever all those little details are that apply to you. You know, our kid's a sophomore, or they're a freshman, or they're an eighth grader, or they're a junior, and whatever they're saying. So don't panic over the headlines. Everything is going to be in the details. I strongly encourage you to work with a college consultant, somebody to mentor you and ground you and help your child through this and help you get aids and scholarships in the midst of all of this. Especially if you've gone through this before with older children, help your child adapt to the odd schedule this application season will impose. Normally testing is done and we've moved on to other aspects of this process. For most of our kids, testing's not done. There are other things they can do now that a lot of times they would have done later that they should do now, because testing is going to happen later. And so if they don't approach it carefully, they're going to end up with this huge train wreck of whatever school ends up being in the fall, and testing and essays and recommenders and the whole 9 yards all at the same time. So if you've been through this before, you know all the steps, they're going to have to flow through in a different way. And then help your child come to know him or herself well, their strengths, their weaknesses, their learning style. There are things everybody's good at, and there's things that everybody's not good at. And so if your kid just can't organize themselves, find their way out of a paper bag, help them develop those skills. There are lots of resources online. There are lots of resources and things that you can implement in the home to help train them. Give them language so that they know, when I'm looking at a school, I'm looking for, this sort of support, this sort of accommodation. Where do they find that? Is that the tutoring center? Is it some other center? There are different names for all these things at the different colleges so that they know what to look for. And then they can reach out to the appropriate person and say, I'm curious, I'm a person that needs this sort of learning support because I have this challenge. Okay, whatever that is. And they could say, oh yeah, we're really good at that. Or we're really not good at that. We would do this instead. And you may know that doesn't work at all. Okay, then this school's not a great fit for me. Or is there another way I can supplement? But it helps them to evaluate it, because the kids need to do a lot of this work, but they need some of that language. We're the ones that go to the doctors and talk to people and understand a little bit better kind of what is going on with our kids, and helping our kids be honest with themselves, because you might think you're the best writer in the world, but actually it's kind of mediocre. So let's get you working with somebody to help those essays come to life, or you're a great creative writer or a great this or that, but this other part's kind of weak. Let's, find a way to work on that. If that's Khan Academy for your math skills or whatever that is. And giving them that space to explore themselves, but that support so that they can further explore. And you can obviously hold them accountable. Did you actually look that up? What's going on now? That kind of thing. I offer college planning services from $99 a month. I've got a number of plans so that they meet different families' needs. I also offer essay coaching, funding coaching, financial aid form prep services, and discounted online test prep courses from ePrep. So that's available as a resource. And I strongly recommend, especially this season, working with a college advisor or consultant in order to take advantage of all the opportunities that are in the midst of this chaos. And as early as 8th grade, I can help students start to plan out their academic careers, to reflect their talents and interests, prepare for their ideal post-high school program. One of my happiest kids went to welding school. So I've helped kids get ready to go to graduate school, and I've helped kids go to the trades. While colleges start to close and merge, it's going to be harder than ever before to navigate the landscape, and keeping on top of these changes is a full-time job. I'm spending a lot more time in some of these meetings than I've ever done before, and a college advisor can help with that. But I do want to say, as a Catholic homeschooler, my primary focus is on helping students become people of high moral character, develop their gifts and talents, and define their dreams. It is my job and my privilege to guide them to the steps they can take to make those dreams a reality. It's what I've been doing for the past 16 years. And in this current climate, with colleges working harder than ever to attract students, my role is even more important to help them sift out the reality from the marketing fiction and what's really going on. The potential to win more scholarships and have opportunities at schools that they wouldn't have before is wonderful and perilous at the same time. Is that going to be the right fit? Are you going to be in too deep? Is this appropriate for you? Is this going to really help you thrive? And I love partnering with families to help them look at the whole thing, the financial, the student development, and the college piece, so that it all comes together and the student goes off and thrives. I wanted to share a little bit of feedback I got from somebody I worked with a few years ago, because it's so hard to know until we're into the midst of it. So she said, I figured I'm a professional project manager. I can do this myself. For over a year now, I have had a second job. I'll admit at this point that I was penny wise and pound foolish in not engaging Katherine to do more of this for our family. If you decide to take on this research and admissions process yourself, you need to be unfailingly organized, ready to nag your kids regularly, and ready to spend hours and hours and hours of your free time over months. It's no fun to do this yourself, so if you can find the money, save yourself the grief. So even if you want to do it on your own, those are the things you need to be really putting into it. I want to invite you to schedule a meeting with me to create a college success plan. I also want to invite you to put your questions in the chat if you haven't done that. I forgot to remind you midway, but we'll be having Q&A next. But in our meeting, we'll create a common sense results-driven action plan for your college-bound team. So the website is there of where my calendar is, and you can schedule that. There is a small fee for that. Then I also have a gift for you for taking time out of your Saturday today. If you go to celticcollegeconsultants.com/free-book, there'll be a form you can fill out so I can know where to send a PDF of an ebook I wrote called 15 Ways to Save $10,000 on College. And these are real, actionable strategies you can use, your student can use, and you can combine, you can use more than one of them to save on college. So I would love to send that to you. My last 6 graduating classes have done very well. That's actually all the classes I've ever tracked. So this last year was over $275,000 each in merit scholarships. So that was pretty cool. But it's been over 240 each on average that they've been offered. So let's take a look at Q&A. I'll put that back up so that you can see those websites, especially for the free gift, because that's helpful. Let's see. The personal essay requires a lot of self-reflection and time. And so that would be the next thing that I would recommend that you start on, because we have this time and it's probably going to take these kids a little bit longer because they kind of need to get kind of in the headspace of just themselves and outside of COVID and everything that's going on. But that would be the next step as far as preparing the application process. And they're going to need that pretty much no matter where they go. And it's what they need to say. So I help kids figure out what that message needs to be, and then various ways that they can put that forward in a really strong way. And then we look at prompts. So for the UCs, we'd split it out so the message gets conveyed with the 4 different prompts they pick out of the 8, or the Common App with its main prompt. So that's what I would suggest would be the first thing. In parallel with that is the deeper dive into the colleges. Unless students have been working with somebody, typically they haven't done that research very well. And especially in this climate, we really want to make sure that they are teed up to be really effective in that college selection piece, so that they have the right programs. So those would be the 2 things I think I would recommend the most. The other thing I would suggest is patience, because the admissions office and the financial aid offices are doing the best they can, but it's really a different environment when they're not next to each other. They can't compare notes. They can't easily collaborate. So they're having to work around everything they've got going at home to meet with each other. They're having lots of meetings with people like us. They're starting to have more virtual college fairs and things. But it is meaning that processing email and communicating back with students is a challenge. Though there's some odd things. There's a student I'm working with that goes to Escondido Charter, and he shifted. He had a last minute shift in May, actually, about what he wanted to do and how he wanted to approach things. And so one of the CSU schools he reached out to and said, "Hi, I'm a full pay Californian with test scores which were very strong for that school. And I discovered this program a couple weeks ago, and he had done a whole bunch of research. He just dove into it. It's like, oh my gosh." And so when he brought it to me, he's like, "I've got 10 different reasons why," and they all made sense. I was like, all right. And so he's doing, we're calling it a Hail Mary, but they have a procedure so he applied a week and a half ago to a CSU school. He'll probably get in. And he'll go there because he's like, absolutely, if I get in, I'm going. And that wouldn't have been possible before. So it's been interesting being able to be a little bit creative with these kids and figure things out. I think there'll be even more of that sort of thing going on with juniors. Sadly, financial need is going to be a piece of it. Colleges weren't really need blind before. They're definitely not need blind now. So that's going to be, we'll see. The kids with more money are going to have more options, but that's not news. I don't tend to work with too many of those. I tend to work with families that have need and finding ways through that. So if you don't have any more questions, I think I may just end it early today. I know it's a beautiful day in most parts of the country, so we can all kind of get a little outside time. I'm really glad that you took the time today. I'm hoping that you'll schedule a consultation and we can create a college success plan for your family. And I look forward to meeting with you and supporting your efforts as you move forward. Have a wonderful day.